Hi, Lawrence. We're back having a chat. We've just been chatting for about 15 minutes before we got started here, and we're just going to kind of keep talking because we've got a lot of different topics to get into, and the title of this video is Flat Earth Conspiracy Revisited, and there's a reason why it's going to be revisited because Lawrence and I are no longer and haven't been for quite some time conventional flat earthers. Most flat earthers believe in a specific kind of map and model and idea of how the earth works and the sky works and so on. And Lawrence and I haven't believed that for quite some time. And also, Lawrence and I were the ones who got off of the AE map very early on and started looking at alternative models. We both have visited concave Earth, flat Earth, infinite plane Earth, on and on. Everything. We've hardly missed any models or ideas that people haven't thrown out there. And we were the ones who started the idea about Pac-Man. If it isn't this and it isn't that and it can't work this way and it can't work that way, well, then maybe it's Pac-Man. Well, the reason why we chose that was because Pac-Man would result in the need for a supernatural simulated type Earth. So that's all I'm going to say about that. We're just going to take off on some topics. We have visited so many topics over the last 3.5, almost 4 years, and everything from giants and no trees on flat Earth and mud floods and giant bodies buried in the ground and so on. But one thing that we have not delved into seriously is whether or not this is a matrix, whether or not this is a created, simulated Earth life. And so we're going to talk about that. I recently wrote a couple of 1- and 2-part blog articles on flatearthconspiracy.com website, and you can go and read them and see what you think. And we're going to take off on that because we haven't had a hangout since I wrote those. And I would like to see what Lawrence has to say about that concept and that idea. So, hi, Lawrence.
Yep. Hi, Laurie. Yeah, I mean, we've been going off at a tangent for quite some time because we've, at one point we were sort of solely focused on flat Earth and ignoring all the other things that were going on around us. And a few weeks back, we were basically on our last broadcast, we were talking about the mud flood, and we've both subsequently realized that there wasn't a world mud flood. And I actually pointed out one of those. If you go and search on mud flood, the first one that comes up tells you about this church in Omaha, and we discussed that, and it's quite obvious that with that particular one, there's no mud flood because the church was built downwards because they wanted to get rid of the hill in the town, so they built downwards. And if you take a look at those Omaha photographs, you'll see structural supports where they were in the process of building downwards, so they didn't move the door up because of the flood. That's where the door always was. But they built downwards because the town wanted to get rid of the hills, and it's all documented if you go and take a look at Omaha. And from there, you just had this sudden inspiration, and your mind started racing, and you were getting great clarity of thought that it's got to be a simulation. And I latched onto that straight away because it all seemed to make sense. And since then, I mean, the world's gone absolutely crazy, and the supernatural has reared its head, and the supernatural is real. I mean, it's just getting phenomenal. I mean, you might not agree with some of the ones I've posted about, but you look at the jet aircraft now, you look at pictures that have been drawn, how to sketch an aircraft, and you've got these jet aircraft now with the air. I was thinking this last time I was flying. The engines are in front of the wings now with some piece of metal coming out holding them out, and they never were in the past. I've actually found what you call the residual evidence of what the planes really look like. So that is a change in our reality. But the biggest one, and I expected this to be true anyway. It was quite incredible. Me and Laurie were talking about the Bible and what it was all about in terms of Mandela and stuff. And actually, we weren't even on Mandela. I was thinking that the Bible, just didn't believe so much of the Old Testament because there was so much, blood sacrifices and, loads of circumcisions and things like that, which I didn't think would be appertaining to a loving God. But I stumbled onto, because I've never really looked at Mandela, because Mandela is focused entirely on the United States. Everything that's been a Mandela effect has been the United States, and we don't buy those products. We don't watch those Mr. Rogers shows and things like that. The only thing that we'd have heard of in Britain would be Snow White and the Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. I saw Snow White probably 7 times when I was a kid, because I love seeing the little dwarfs going down the mines, and it was funny for when you were 1964, I think I saw it when I was 6 years old. But it was always Mirror, Mirror on the Wall. It was never Magic Mirror. And I stumbled onto the Bible. I mean, this is just so incredible. All these things like the Lord's Prayer and obviously the Lion and the Lamb, but there's so much more. And the Bible is now blasphemic, and you've got characters in the Bible now. Here's one. There's a Barack. Never been a Barack before. There's an Oh Holy Obama, believe it or not, character. You've got the words Trump in the Bible now. You've got the word Bill and the word Cosby, which were never in before. And then you've got some terrible stuff. I haven't got the chapter in front of me here, but you've got the Bible. I mean, this is not fitting for a Bible. You've got a passage where they talk about men by a wall eating their own dung and drinking their own piss. And then you've also got in several places the expression, he pisseth against the wall. And then you've got 2 Chronicles 10:10. You've got it's getting pornographic. You've got this woman talking about a passage about a woman saying her little finger was the same thickness as her dad's dick. Well, she said loins, but if you look at loins, it's a sexual connotation. And then you've got Job 21:24. Man breasts full of milk. Well, that would never be in the Bible. And now we've got another ark, Exodus 2. Moses was put in an ark. He wasn't put in a basket made of papyrus. And then you've got Jesus being blasphemed. Luke 1:35. Yeah, Jesus is referred to as that holy thing. It's just crazy. And there's loads more. And it's so obviously it's been altered because you've got these blocks of capital letters now. Words are capitalized. And obviously capital letters take up more space, and they've had to put those in places so that the text would fit in the paragraphs, and the text all lined up properly. You've got question marks not followed by a capitals. There's so many punctuation errors. So I went down to my local curiosity shop, and I spent an hour there, looked through 10 Bibles. I've got a couple here. I've got a King James and I've got a 1902 one. And they've all got this stuff in, check. And I'm talking to the guy in the bookshop, and I'm testing him out and about stuff. Do you know the Lord's Prayer? Yeah, I know the Lord's Prayer. I know it by heart. Quoted it. And I said, is that going to be in this Bible? He said, yep. Open the Bible. It won't there because the Lord's Prayer now says, forgive us our debtors as those who debt against us, or words to that effect. And the trespassers has just gone out of it altogether. We said the Lord's Prayer in assembly, when I was a child every year. So, we know it's forgive us our trespasses as those that trespass against us. I was at a wedding a couple of months back, and they said the Lord's Prayer. They didn't say, forgive our debtors as we forgive those who debt against us, because that they're still on the old one. They haven't realized that it's changed in the Bible. So to change the written word in books this book had been on this guy's had this Bible in his shop for 40 years, covered in dust, because I had to go up a big step ladder to find these old Bibles. But the words have physically changed in this and thousands of books, millions of books all over the world. You can go and check for yourself and read these passages, and it's just getting crazy. That can only be supernatural, which is a simulation. And then in a simulation, you can manifest things, or if the people who are controlling it are keeping an eye on you. This giant's finger I found the other week when we went to the wedding, I just thought it into existence, and it was there. And I did this video about the 4 billion ton men, and they can be Mandela. They could have been just created there because nobody, YouTube's been around for what, since the early 2000s, and all of a sudden this just comes out of nowhere. Nobody noticed before. It's like and all the if you look on the Mandela stuff now, they're changing the shapes of the continents. You've got this South America coming right over towards the east, whereas before it was virtually straight down. And you've got countries like Costa Rica. I always thought Costa Rica was an island, but now it's part of Central America. It's crazy. So people are saying the geography is all wrong. Travel agents have been looking at the maps and saying, "What's this? This is all wrong now. Everything's been changed." But once you're aware of it, you start noticing stuff, and you do get supernatural things happening around you that you can't explain. Because I said, right, give me a sign that I'm right on this simulation. And I said because this is, I mean, you and I was under the impression that, because I watched the Zeitgeist, and I know people tried to debunk it, but there was all these similarities between Jesus, being the sun in the sky because he was the Son of God, and he walked on water, and the sun shines on water, and the crown of thorns, and the 12 disciples, and the signs of the zodiac. And but you got me off that. And so now I believe that, I believe in Jesus, because it all makes sense now. All this stuff that's going on now, you're going to start seeing all sorts of weird things. I mean, there was a frigging a moose the size of an elephant walking down the central reservation of a motorway, and people just couldn't believe it, but it was there. They could see it. So they're putting all sorts of freaky stuff out there, and you can only do that in a simulation. Anyway, so I said, I want you to give me a sign. Now, my dog, I mean, I've had the signs before on my dog. I asked them last time to do something, but this time I was specific, because I go down to the beach and I throw the ball for the dog, and he goes out towards the sea. And I'll go up to him where he stopped. I'll throw the ball again, and he goes out. And we've been going down there for nearly 2 years. He does it all the time. So I said to God or Jesus or whoever's listening, one of the angels, I want a sign that this is a simulated world. And the dog kept within about a 20-meter parameter for half a mile all the way back to the thing. And I just knew that this was a sign. I know it sounds crazy, but it was a sign. And on the way back, I called in at the petrol station, the supermarket. They've got, you get a bit of groceries. And I opened the fridge. I took a carton of almond milk out, and I took it out there. And the next thing, one jumps out at me, hits me on the chest, and the milk goes all over the floor out of nowhere. And I was driving home a few weeks before, and when I was asking about something else, and I came to a roundabout. Now, in the UK, you give way to the right. Well, this woman should have been giving way to me on the roundabout, but she didn't. So she just about she just missed me. And I don't use the horn. I know in America, people like blaring their horn, and, well, you see it in the movies anyway. I only use the horn on the car to let somebody know that they're in danger. I don't use it out of anger. I just don't. So but my horn, I've got both hands on the steering wheel, my horn beeps on its own. And I'm thinking, well, I didn't touch it. How did that happen? I mean, it's just all got really freaky, you know. And over to you, Laurie. I mean, it's just totally freaking out.
Somebody's trying to get your attention, Lawrence. And
Yeah.
Typically, people ask for signs all the time. And normally, the people who ask for signs are people who aren't fully in what they call belief or faith yet. So they need constant reassurance, or they just need that one thing to push them over the cliff to say, okay, now you got me. Okay. So my mind has been transitioning for the last couple of months. And like I said, I sat down and I like to write, but I don't type very well. So I have Dragon Naturally Speaking on my computer, that you just talk and it types it out. It takes a little while for it to understand your speaking patterns and so on. But I decided I have all of this technology available to me. Sit down and write your thoughts. So I did, and I got really good feedback so far. I've written 2 parts. I think the first one was something like, 3,000 words, and the second one was close. And it just sort of flowed out of me. And I was trying to use the movie The Matrix as
Laurie, just let me say something quickly.
Okay.
The first part of the blog, I mean, that's probably the most brilliant thing Laurie's ever wrote. If you go to the flatearthconspiracy.com website, you can read it there. And if you haven't read it, it's well worth a read. So back to you.
Thank you very much, Lawrence. It's called, the title starts Simulation, blah, blah. And there's 2 parts. Now at the moment, I can't remember what it was, and I don't want to look it up right now, but I'll put it in the comment, or in the info section underneath the video. So when I started trying to explain something that really has no language for it, no words, and I kind of felt like Lewis Carroll writing Jabberwocky. I felt like I was almost having to make up my own language because so many words and terms have been bastardized already on purpose, so that when all of this information starts to come out and people like me, I'm not the only one. There are a lot of people starting to lean toward understanding that we live in a biological simulation. And even the word simulation, the word singularity, the word virtual reality, all of these terms have already been so defined previously, and I think purposefully to confuse and to distort and create chaos in thinking. And so it's kind of like having to create a new language, because once people start reading things, their attention span is so short anymore that the minute you say the wrong word and it triggers in them a meaning that they already had and had already discarded, they stop and they go away, and they won't go further. And a 3,000 word blog article is a long article for most people. I tried to break it up into sections, but anyway, to paraphrase and to put it in a synopsis, I believe that God created the heaven and the earth and everything, just like it says in Genesis. And I believe that the earth went along the way that he created it originally, for a while, for a very long while, until things got so completely out of hand by Satan and the fallen angels and the minions that were taken over by those guys. At that point, I believe that the world as it is had to constantly be messed with by God, had to be corrected and corrected. And those were the days where miracles happened. You saw, the people saw them, they reported them, they went down in the history books. And these miracles were supernatural events. And even the word supernatural needs to be defined because it means above natural, above man's ability to explain natural law. And as time has gone by with regards to man's science, man has created science. The scientists and scientism have created excuses or stories or, and invented new ideas, so on and so on, that like reverse engineer these supernatural events that are outside of man's law and ability to explain. So they just make up things like quarks and muons and black holes and so on, that is supposed to be, things we can't see, but they have the ability to control things. And it's just like, really just stop it. Just stop doing that, you guys, because nobody believes you. Only people who dig science fiction, who dig, the unexplained. I mean, they're the only ones you're fooling. So the Satan came along and started with permission to alter what mankind, the world, people, events. And so I call that the submatrix. And as time has gone by, all of the things that Adam and Eve were not supposed to know about, that was the reason why they were told not to eat of the fruit of the tree of good and evil, or of knowledge, because that information caused evil to manifest on earth. And so with regards to the overall simulation, you wouldn't know the difference if you were in one or you weren't, because it's that good. Okay. It's that real. It's like virtual reality movies times, on steroids times 1,000. And so somebody knows that what I'm figuring out and others are figuring out, they know that this is what it is. But at the same time, just like in the movie The Matrix, a whole lot of people, the majority, are in the Matrix. I don't mean they're in little pods, with machines tending to them and being used as batteries for the energy to power the machines, although I'm not going to completely rule that out either. But the idea is that God created this reality that we live in, and Satan has created a sub-reality that a whole lot of people are programmed into. And just like in the movie The Matrix, it's all right there. They say exactly the way that it is. They are hopelessly inured into the matrix, and they don't want it to be any other way. And if you imagine that each of us has our own is running on our own program, okay? No wonder if different people are running on different programs. Let's say, for example, you've got Norton Disc Doctor on one machine, and you've got Malwarebytes on another machine, and you've got Adobe on another machine. They have different language, okay? And so each of those systems, there's one general operating system, but each of those people is running on different programs and different software and different, files and code. So as time's gone by, as everyone notices, we're getting farther and farther apart and more different and more angry at each other and fighting about things that really don't matter. Parties, political parties, and race and gender, and you name it, religions, cultures, all of it. So this submatrix programming, in my opinion, is running inside the general platform. I don't know all the computer terms like some people do. I'm just trying to use them as a way to describe how the supernatural works within the system. And let's say, for example, you asked for a sign, okay? Let's say someone else prays. Prayer is the connection to the matrix, okay? To the creator of the big matrix. And are there other matrices out there? I'm not going to say there isn't. They're not our matrix. We have our own, and this is a closed system. Okay. And maybe there's a Saturn matrix and a Mercury matrix and a Moon matrix. I don't know. And perhaps there are loopholes that different, entities have been able to cross the barrier between the two or 7 or 400 matrices. Don't know. But, I just saw a video the other day, and this is a perfect example of what I'm talking about. SpaceX said, okay, we launched this rocket, and the rocket booster let go, and it made this spiral in the sky in the dark, and people are like, oh, look at that. Oh my God, what is that? Oh, SpaceX comes out later and says, no, not to worry. That was just a burning up booster rocket. Well, then you go back and you look at rock carvings that ancient people did inside caves, and there's these little creatures that look like aliens in the drawing. Maybe they were bad artists, but I'm sure they could have made them look more human if they really wanted to. Right next to that is a spiral picture, and they're all over the place. It's not like just American Indians in Utah or, India. There's rock carvings in South America and other places with this same spiral. Is that spiral a portal? Were they able to come through the matrix and come into our system, our matrix into our system? I don't know, but curiosity has me questioning all the above. Okay. And do I have a problem with being a virtual reality person? Why would I? What difference would it make? I mean, does that change my life? This is the only one I have. This is the way it always has been. And so if it's a created like uber computer generated, and I'm not just talking about putting a bunch of servers together in a great big room and running enough programs to run the world and all 6 or 7 billion humans on it. Although if you had that capacity, but where did the whole idea of virtual reality and computers and data collection and artificial intelligence, where did all of that, and singularity, where did all that come from? The minds of man? I just don't think so. I don't think mankind thought all this up by themselves. I think there's a greater force, and I'm going to name it Satan, Satan backed. Okay. If you don't even believe in Satan, then everything I'm going to say from here on out is probably, might as well turn it off, because it's not going to make any sense to you. But this earth has good and evil. We all know that. Where did evil come from, and how has it been able to manifest to the degree that it has now? Where did all of a sudden, yeah, there's always been transgender people, but in the last couple of decades, now there's like a whole bunch of transgender people. It's like the thing, okay? And it's getting crammed down everybody else's throat. Be whatever you want to be, but at the same time, there's something pushing that agenda. Is it chemical? Is it programming? Is it mind control? What is it? Because that's not natural. Not as long as the history of the earth has been here. That's not natural. So
Yeah, Laurie. Yeah, I mean,
okay.
I mean,
So let me wrap, and then you can take it from here. My idea will either be met with complete pushback. People who say, we bleed, we cut, we break bones, we get in car wrecks, things crunch up. This is real stuff. Pain's real. Growing up is real. Aging is, all these things are real. Of course they are. I said biological simulation. Okay. God said that he made man from the dust of the earth. Those are chemicals. That is iron and magnesium and all the things that we're made up of. Okay. And water and all, you break it all down. Okay. Astrophysicists, theoretical astrophysicists have said, when you break down the smallest atom, the smallest particle, you have code, binary code, ones and zeros. I'm not the only one thinking this through, but the part that I want to make most certain people understand what I'm talking about, the difference here, is the matrix overall and the submatrix that has been created that is now controlling humanity and the world. Okay.
yeah, fantastic, Laurie. Yes. So, just going back to very briefly to the flat Earth, I think we both agreed that they all knew the Earth was flat several hundred years ago, or whatever how far back it is.
Appears flat, yes.
And appears flat, yeah. All right, but at some point they realised that it was a simulation, and the only model that could hide the simulation, in terms of travel at least, is the globe, because it doesn't work on anything else without something supernatural. Supernaturally, equals the matrix. So that's why they had the globe, because it was the only one that would fit, your east to west, and you can keep on traveling. But on any other type of shape or form, it just wouldn't work. So that's why we got the globe, because they had to hide the simulation.
Well, and that's why when the flat Earth was introduced as a psyop to control truth seekers, people who they already knew they had gotten to a maxed out point of being able to fool all of the people all of the time with regards to space travel and moon landings and Mars landings and international space stations and all the glitches and all the crap that everybody has found so obvious that it's like, really, you guys still believe this? But not only that, you expect us to believe this? So at some point, they knew that the critical mass had been met years ago with regards to people not believing in the globe theory anymore. So the next best possible simulation copycat reverse engineered to the globe was that circle map spinning around flat earth AE blah blah with the ice wall and the dome. Okay. And so people latched onto it because it was simple and it was easy to understand. And it bought up about 3 or 4 years worth of good research time by people who think they've got it down. They think they've got answers to everything now. And I read, threads on Facebook all the time from flat earthers that are so adamantly pushing another goober idea, but they can't understand why globetards can't see it. Okay, why can't you see this? This is so simple. And it's like their programming will not allow them to see it. Okay, but they're pushing back against it because it doesn't make as much sense as the globe, right? Right. So the flat earth conspiracy name that I chose and put the website together and the YouTube account and the whole thing was not saying that the globe was a conspiracy any more than the replica that second string flat earth circle map theory was also a conspiracy to hide door number 3. This is a simulation. And so and this is supernatural. And God and Satan and angels and the Holy Spirit and Jesus were able, they're like Neo compared to us. They have the capacity, and the agents, they have the capacity to manipulate the matrix and do what looks supernatural to those who cannot. Right? Can you stop a bullet by throwing your hand up? No. Can you run up the wall and across the ceiling and back down the other side, flying and fighting and everything at the same time? No. So, like the agents, they're explaining perfectly how satanic beings, fallen angels, demons, minions, whatever you want to call them, have the capacity to get inside of people. Agent Smith and all of the other agents could just grab hold of you, Lawrence, if you don't know any better, and just take over your body. Are they shape-shifting? No, they literally took you over. That's what satanic possession or demon possession is. That's what it is.
They did try to get me, Laurie.
Well, they try to get everybody. They try to get everybody.
Man, it was quite freaky what happened to me, because I was having this dream, and it was so vivid, and it seemed real at the time. It was almost as though I wasn't dreaming, and I looked in a mirror, and there was somebody else staring back at me, and I just got the thought that they were trying to switch my soul. And then and I woke up in a cold sweat, and then it happened. I had another dream, same dream, and it was quite spooky. And I spoke to somebody who's spiritually minded at the time, and they said what you have to do is envisage your body with a coating of shiny titanium to reflect all the bad spirits back. And I did envisage that, and it never happened again. But yeah, I
Well,
mean, so
there are believers in God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit who will say that you can do the same thing. Your armor is invoking the name of Jesus and asking for protection and rebuking, that's the word, whatever spirit is trying to harm you. And you can go online and you can read stories for the next 3 years about people who have done that, people who have incubus visitation, succubus visitation, demons trying to possess their spirit, their soul, miraculous healings, people growing arms back, people growing teeth back, people growing hair back, being healed of horrific tumors, all kinds of stuff. Okay. And imagine you go to the doctor and you have, doctor says, oh, here's the x-ray and here's the tests. And they say you've got this massive brain tumor and you're a dead man. It's just a matter of time. And this is inoperable. And we don't have anything to heal it with except radiation and chemo. And that's not going to work on this and blah, blah. And get your affairs in order. You've got, a month. And they go into healing prayer, and sure, they're going to change their diet and they're going to bless their food and they're going to try everything. And there's people who will testify, and doctors will too. The records are showing that they go back to the doctor and there's no tumor. They're fine.
Yeah.
And that's to me, I don't care what you call that, but I call that supernatural. And the only way that could happen is supernaturally, because the laws of nature, cannot, or the laws that man, the nature that man understands at this point, according to every single person who's ever had that tumor at that place to that degree, died.
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's funny how things manifest, though, because I sometimes walk the dog in the park in his evening walk, and it's autumn, or you call it fall, don't you? It's autumn over here now, and there's loads of conkers, horse chestnuts, these brown seeds. Kids play conkers, and I keep walking past them, and I just got the thought that I'm going to collect a load. Didn't know why I was picking them up, but I got half a carrier bag full of them. And I thought, I'm sure there's some good remedies from horse chestnuts. So I started looking it up, and apparently it's very good for treating varicose veins and hemorrhoids. So I made a balm. Don't know why I just made this balm for hemorrhoids and varicose veins. And about three days later, I won't say where I was in case the person's watching, and I won't say his name. But this chap said to me, he started asking me about witch hazel and where he could get a good quality one for. He says it's for a rather embarrassing area. I said, look, I've just got just the thing for you. And I went home and I got him a jar of this balm for hemorrhoids, which is working for him. I can tell it's working for him because
you made a report. So he's having success with your balm.
Well, he doesn't say, but I can tell because of the way he's treating me. I'm not going to ask him personally how you farmers, but Farmer Giles. It's a British saying. So yeah, so it's that, but that just I'm picking something up. I'm not sure why I'm doing it at the time because I wasn't going to be playing conkers. And just going back to the flat Earth. No model works in terms of the sun. None of them work with the equinox. So in
before you go off on that, I have to say one comment about the balm. In the old days, you would have been called a witch and you would have been burned at the stake. You know why?
Yeah.
Because of one thing that you said not too long ago about when you were making your potions. Your balms and your oils and black salve and whatever else, you you manifest feelings and thoughts and stuff into it, right?
Yeah.
And that's what makes it work, in your opinion, as much as the actual ingredients. And so you would have been heretical, and you would have probably been dunked in the water to see if you drowned. That's one thing they
Yeah.
did to witches. And the other was set them on fire. And if you burned up, you were a witch. And if you didn't,
Yeah.
I don't know what the hell. But um, I just
Yeah.
want to
I
throw
don't.
that in there. Okay,
I,
so back to flat Earth and
yeah.
some of the things that we had a hard time with explaining on any map or any model, okay, which is one of the things that led us to Pac-Man, um, was things like going east and coming back to where you started, okay, which that's why half the people out there would automatically, that would be their first thing they would say, that's why it's a globe. And the sun coming up in the east and setting in the west and coming back up again in the east the next day. Um, and the whole idea of, well, so you can't see demonstrable curvature, but the Earth is so big, and so once we broke down the globe, then we broke down the AE map and model. Okay. We only both individually addressed concave, and all of the same reasons that it didn't work for the globe didn't work for concave. Um, Although there are plenty who still believe that. And what's interesting is most of the concave people started out as flat earth people and realized flat earth didn't work. So they went to concave, and they actually, most of them act like when you figure out that it's not flat and you start looking into concave, you'll see that we're ahead of you and that we're smarter than you are. And we got there faster, and poor
Yeah.
little flat tards. Okay.
So yeah. So before we came on air, I think we both, well, you said it, but the Earth isn't anything. It appears flat wherever you are. So it's certainly not a spinning globe, but it's not anything. If it's a simulation, it's just a localized environment that's been created for you, from your subjective viewpoint. The sun that you see, when I was thinking about it the other day, I was looking at the sun, this tiny sun in the sky, and I'm thinking, oh, I can see it here. And you drive your car up a few miles and you don't see it at all. But, that same sun is being seen by everybody all over the world at times. It's just a non-starter. And obviously with your equinoxes where everybody's, taking a compass out and seeing the same reading, that doesn't work. It doesn't work. That can only work in a simulation. Everything is local. The sun is rising to the east, local to you, but the other people are seeing the same sun. But all these suns are not seen at the same time because it's a simulation. But the sun is local to you. The moon is local to you. The
And to
stars that you
everyone near
see.
you, make sure you agree
Yeah.
that
Yeah.
the simulation is um, consistent, okay, and
Yeah.
there rarely are any glitches, okay, meaning like I wake up and I don't have any sun today, still dark out and everybody else sees light, and they say, well, you say, well, where's the sun? Well, it's right there. Well, I don't see it. Well, that would be a glitch for me, wouldn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so, the programming is overall the setting for everyone is consistent. And here's things that we rarely even ever talked about. Things like earthquakes, volcanic eruptions, tides, eclipses, those are all part of the overall simulation, right? But like an earthquake, for example, well, we all grew up hearing the same story, right? So the mantle crust shifted and the plate bashed over the other plate, and that caused the, whole disruption and earthquake. And, as children and young people, or anyone who wants to be done being educated because it's time to move on, accepted all of those explanations for all of those things: rain and clouds and atmosphere and barometric pressure. And unless you're really into any one of those things, you just accept, on face value, what you're told, what you read in Wikipedia, or, see on the news or hear in school. And so what happens is, when you start questioning some of those things, like you don't usually just question one of those things. Okay, I'm good with everything else, but I'm not good with earthquakes and their explanation. Or I'm not good with, eclipses and their explanation. Or the remember last year with the eclipse that went across the United States, and the 70-mile wide shadow path of total whatever eclipse. And people were going, well, how can the moon this big? The shadow cast by an object is the same size as the object itself. It doesn't get smaller. And, all of this. There was more questioning that went on about that one eclipse event. And there's eclipses all the time. People, just Americans, it's like, they don't care or hear about anybody else's eclipse sightings, right? It's just when it's on American soil. And it's probably the same thing for you in the UK. You don't see as many of them probably as other people do.
Yeah, and that was another good analogy I thought came up with when you came up with this simulation. For some reason I started looking at the Kola Deep mines where they go 8 miles down, and it's not just the Russians who did it. They tried in Germany and the United States, and obviously it's the heat. It gets several hundred degrees, and the drills don't work. And what we have there is a literal firewall of a simulation. That's the firewall, and above, it might be cold. It might be the reverse. The
Right.
opposite to what's below, but you can't get beyond it. So yeah, I'm all in board with the simulation. But just you'll like this actually. Just going back to Satan, with we know Satan's doesn't is sexless. He's a androgyne or whatever, and he wants everybody to be like him, and they want unisex for this, and like they're bringing in the new toilets throughout America and all this, the legislation in schools now where children can be transgendered without telling their parents. They're bringing legislation in that. I think they've done it in what's that place near New York, New Jersey? I think they've done it there.
Mm-hmm.
But so they're actually tuning the Bible up to meet this kind of stereotype. So in the Bible now, you've got a part. I haven't got it in front of me about the men washing the dishes. I mean, fucking, do they wash the dishes then? Man bathing the baby. And the men with breasts in his milk. I mean, they sort of all the role reversals that they're trying to put upon us in today's society. But they're doing it in the Bible as well. They're writing in all these passages for it. But what I want to
Well,
go
I'll give you one.
go on. Yeah.
You know, computer language, since that's what we're using, because it's
Yeah.
something most people can relate to and understand nowadays. If you tried to use it, 50 years ago, it wouldn't work. So imagine Sodom and Gomorrah. God was upset with, the degradation and the, evil and sinning that was going on there. And so what did he do? He deleted it. He just deleted the entire Sodom and Gomorrah. Okay. And, how that happened, I mean, fireballs from the sky, or, told Lot's wife not to turn around and look back or you would be turned to stone. Simulation. I mean, parting of the Red Sea, Jonah going in the whale. I mean, you can go story after story that most people will not believe because they can't imagine it literally happening that way. And yet, in a simulation where those who have a higher level of manipulation of the simulation can perform miracles, like no big deal, right? And one day, if you have knowledge that we have and capabilities that we have, you could do that too. But if you just, try to look at the whole thing again, and let me say this about the Bible, because this is something that a lot of people would really have a problem with and consider it blasphemous. I am a Christian. I am a believer. I believe in God. I believe in Jesus, and I believe I am saved, and I believe that my sins were washed away, and that when I die, I'm going to heaven. I believe that. If you don't believe any of that, you can't say that there's something stupid or wrong with me, because I have accumulated this belief over an entire lifetime by a bunch of different things that have happened to me and my own personal, experiences and relationship. So you got to walk a mile in my shoes to be able to poo-poo anything that I believe. Okay. That being said, I also am well aware that individuals who wrote, and talking about the Mandela effect with regards to the Bible, individuals who wrote these inspired words of God, all the books that are contained in the Bible, the 66 books, there are apocryphal books that are not contained in the Bible. But when each of these people wrote these, manifestos that they wrote, they didn't know that one day their book and their book was going to be put together in a big book and bound together in a series of stories that becomes known as the Holy Bible. They couldn't have known that unless God told them, write this, and then one day it's going to be, Mark and John and the boys are going to, also write theirs, and it's all going to be combined, because this took place over 1,500 years. Okay. So, for anybody to get upset that the Bible's being altered, a few words here and a few words there, remember the idea behind the Bible. It is the inspired word of God. Okay. What those people wrote, carved in papyrus, written on stone, wherever it came from, Dead Sea Scroll. I mean, all these different things. When it all was occurring was pre-Bible. Okay. So when someone put the book together, Council of Nicaea, King James Version, official. Do you know how many times the Bible's been translated? How many languages it's been translated into? How many words have to be picked out of each different language that try to mean the same thing? So the Word of God, the inspired Word of God, should be written on your heart if you have that connection. And what the book says and the arguments about the words shouldn't matter, because if it were possible, even the elect would be deceived. This, I think, is what they were talking about.
Yeah, I know. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, I mean, I haven't read it, but I get the gist of it. You know, a lot of it's just stories anyway, and a lot of them.
Well, do you realize how many of the stories are about the Nephilim, the post-Nephilim, the giants, fighting and killing the giants, the tainted, that mankind was being tainted by this crossbreeding that was going on? And it's kind of like, you know, I know I'm treading very carefully here in the words that I'm using, but I don't really care what anybody says about me. I'm trying to impart an idea here. If you're God and you create this perfect realm and everything works perfectly, animals and people don't eat each other, and everything is beautiful, and the weather's always beautiful, and, you know, all of that. And suddenly, angels who are not supposed to be doing anything down here but watching start screwing all the women and making making hybrid humans. Well, of course, what's God got to do when it gets to the point of saturation, when man can't kill the giants, all the giants anymore, because the breeding is just overrunning everything? He just does a flood and wipes everybody out except the, you know, the people on the ark and the animals that are on the ark. Now, the Bible says in the days of Noah, the Nephilim were here and after. Okay. So people say, well, they came back. Okay. Or he didn't kill them all. There's arguments about all of this between everybody that reads the book. And there's no way of knowing Noah's sons' wives, whether they had Nephilim blood in them. And it all started over again. Did God know this was going to happen? Sure he did. Sure he did. But this time he had a plan that when the overrunning started happening again, here he comes in the body of Jesus to run an interface between the humans that are sinners, because they've got the evil taint to them now, and God. God can't interface with sin or taint or any of that, only his perfect creation. And so in order to create a conduit back to God, there was the plan. And now it doesn't matter anymore. There's people who worry about, oh, I have Rh negative blood. Am I one of the Nephilim? And if you are, it doesn't matter anymore, because you now have an interface between you and heaven. It doesn't matter what your blood says. It doesn't matter what your genetics say.
Right, Laurie, because
But that's mostly what the Bible, the Old Testament, is about, is explaining that whole thing in such a roundabout way that, you know, it's written by people who they're in it. They don't see the big picture.
Yeah, all right. Well, God's initial plan for mankind, God, obviously God knew what was going to happen, because he wrote Revelation, so he's telling them what's going to happen anyway. So God had his plan for everybody who's existed since time began, but he knew it was doomed to failure to form part of his ultimate plan, which was to, you know, I'm feeling like he's selecting the purest souls and rejecting the rest. I mean, that's how I'm seeing it. But to do that, here's the question for you: I'm thinking good cop, bad cop, but are they in it together? God and Satan, are they in it together? Does God, this is the
No.
question for you, does God need Satan for his plan to come to fruition? Could he do it without Satan? Does he need Satan? That's the question.
To finish it? Is that the question? Does he need
To bring
Satan
about his
to
to
bring it
to bring
back
about his
to?
ultimate plan, because
Well,
he
but
needs a bad
okay,
cop, doesn't
I
he?
got you. Okay, according to prophecy, in the end. Okay, let me start here. Satan made a deal with Adam when they were in the garden, and he has now dominion over the earth. In other words, there's a lease, and the lease has a course. God has to play by rules just like everybody else does because God made the rules. So the rules, it's like the court of law. Okay. Here's the way the process has to be. And God can't break rules. Satan breaks any rule he can try to break, but there are certain parameters that he cannot go beyond. In other words, he can't just directly kill you. He can make you kill yourself. He can run somebody else into you and kill you in a car wreck. Okay, so at the end of the game, God's going to destroy the earth once and for all. He's going to roll it up like a scroll. The mountains will fall to the earth. The stars will fall from the sky. I hope I'm not here for that. But if I were, I'm going to know what's going on here. Okay, it's going to be pretty horrific. And he's going to destroy the earth program as it is. And he's going to create a new one. And there will be no Satan because Satan gets killed in the end. He's like Kenny. He won't come back, though. Kenny is in South Park, for those who don't know what I'm talking about. Kenny always gets killed at the end of every South Park episode. But this time, he will get thrown in the lake of fire. The lake of fire is like deleted and erased from the program. Okay? So there will be no more Satan, and there will his fallen angels that got corrupted, the corrupted code, all of it goes away. And everybody who is saved at that point, which is all a free will choice. God knows what's on your heart, you know, sinners and all that kind of stuff. You got to look at the Bible's concept as a deal's a deal. Okay. So is God evil for letting Satan run amok down here? No, because that's the rules, and he has to go by them just like Satan has to go by them.
So do you think the whole point of all the existences of everybody that's been is to pick the best souls and get rid of the ones that he doesn't like? Ultimately, putting it crudely, is that the plan?
Okay, well, let me answer that this way. Am I the best soul? No. I'm just one soul. It's a mutually beneficial arrangement. Okay. It's kind of like if you choose to honor God and you choose to honor Jesus and the Holy Spirit, it's a Trinity, God, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. The ritual has already been performed to allow you to go have all the sin code stripped out of you, out of your spirit on the way up, on the way to the next world, to heaven. So it's your choice. That's what free will is. Free will isn't about, oh, I'm going to have chocolate or I'm going to have vanilla. Okay. That's choice. Free will is all designed about universal law of free will is about choosing God and good or Satan and here and death.
Was that a yes then, Laurie? Was you agreeing with me
Um,
about soul selection?
no, not exactly. I'm not exactly agreeing with you. God's not making the only choice. You're making the choice too. It's a mutual choice.
Okay. Okay. All right. Okay. So this life is basically to go to heaven. You need to know. You need to really understand what the overall plan is and what it's all about, and what's expected of you.
Well, I mean,
Which is just
let's face it, Lawrence. There's very few people, even of all the different religions and cultures and sects on Earth. There's very few people who haven't heard of Jesus, haven't heard of God in the Bible, whether they you know whether they go that path or not is their choice. Most of the time it's cultural and programming and indoctrination why they don't, because they're told their book and their religion is just as powerful as Christianity, for example. So what I'm talking about simulation is, let's say, okay, look at it as, do you play computer games? Virtual reality, VR computer games. Have you ever played one?
no, not yet. No.
Have you ever played a simulation game?
Last time I played games, Laurie, was about 35 years ago. And played
Okay.
Pac-Man
All
in the
right.
pub. That was it.
All right. The virtual reality games are so good now, Lawrence, that there are people who kind of almost are in it, They're so addicted and so in it. It's all like they're all in. Okay. So, when they're not playing, they're living it in their mind. They're planning, can't wait till they
Yeah.
get off work to play it again.
Oh yeah, I
So,
know. Well,
let's imagine that, this world is, look at the difference in the simulation of your life as a child versus your life right now. Okay. Life as a child, everybody remembers, people that are old like us remember life was simple, even though there were wars and there were, bad things going on Earth. I mean, I grew up in the Cold War. But in general, life was simpler. You didn't have to have licenses for everything, and it's just you just layers upon layers upon layers of legal and bureaucracy and programs and platforms and blah blah. So when you compare that, and then you go back a generation before us to our parents, and then they would say, oh, life was so much simpler then. Now, imagine the people who are living now who are in their teens. If we keep going in the same progression we're going now, the submatrix is pretty much running their entire existence at this point, right?
oh yeah. I mean,
The
that's I
money
noticed it
system, the
today.
beast system, the government
Yeah,
system, you can't get away from it.
particularly the women that they're sat. I see them in the park walking their dog. They've got a lead in one hand and they've got the mobile phone, cell phone, or whatever iPhone in
They're
front of
completely
them,
sucked in. Yep.
and they're into it. And this thing with Elon Musk, where he's talking about effectively linking some kind of internet to the brain, man machine.
Well, I mean, that's what Singularity is supposed to go to, it's humans connected with the machines, all connected to all the information available on Earth. So you've got artificial intelligence. The Matrix movie made the machines look so horrific and ominous, right? they look like bugs crawling around, and snakes and just horrific creatures. I would doubt very seriously that Satan's plan would adapt the same way, because if you're going to fool all of the people all of the time, you can't scare the shit out of them, right? All the time. And so to be off the grid in today's world typically would be equivalent to a third world country, or finding someplace in the backwoods somewhere, or in your case, out in the, what do you call the Glen? Like, where nobody lives. And so
you're never that.
You're never that far from civilization. I don't care where you are. You're easily 400 or 500 miles from civilization, a city. So, and that's anywhere on Earth, right? So, what I'm saying here is that I've come to grips with, if it's not this and it's not this and it's not this, it's likely this, all right? And I'm okay with that, because I understand how it can work and still have faith and hope and love and joy and all the things that humans are supposed to be enjoying here. That's what they were. That's the way it was in the Garden of Eden. And so, in a sense, I also know that if I have it all right and I believe what I believe, I have protection against all this evil by invoking the power of the name and the saving of Jesus Christ. So I got my connection to God. I'm good with that. And I'm in the world, but I'm not of the world.
See, all right, let me ask you another question.
Of the world, not in the world. Yeah.
Here's another question for you. So we are getting a lot of strange things happening, and things changing, which, are beyond all normal explanation. So, and these things are changing the world as we know it. Who is behind all these changes right now? Who is actually, doing the code to do that, to change it? Because if that's the main matrix, that would mean Satan's got access to the main matrix, which you say he's only got access to his sub matrix. So who is doing the changes to the main matrix now?
Well, I think that
who's changing these books? Who's changing the written word in these books? Is that Satan, or is it God? Because it says here in Amos 11.
I mean, Lawrence, why would God change his own word?
Well, it says here that he will. It says, I will send Amos 8:11. I will send a famine, not for food and drink, or bread, or whatever he wants to call it, but hearing the words of the Lord. So whether he's doing it himself or using Satan to do it, he is the one who's ultimately behind. He says he will send it. If what that parable says, or that chapter says, if that's true, then God has orchestrated what's happening now.
Well, that's part of the mystery of trying to understand. See, we're supposed to be childlike. We're not supposed to be all caught up in all this stuff and analytical, and we're supposed to be free of all that. Okay. We get sucked into it because we're curious by nature, and we're creative ourselves. And so if it's God changing it, if it's Satan changing it, I believe there's a yin and yang to everything. And I know that there's rules. And I know that God has to live by those rules because he set those rules. So if the rules say no one can change the word, then if Satan tries to change it, God will change it back. But I think what that particular scripture means, to my understanding, is overall, the word will be lessened to people, whether from whatever avenue it's coming from, censorship, Christians being shut up, the Bible being removed or censored or whatever. And so just like with Noah and the flood, Noah warned everybody about the flood. It took him like 100 years to build the boat. That's a lot of warning, right? So, perhaps God has a flag on the field at some point and says, okay, final warning. I'm not sure that's a good metaphor, but you know what I'm saying? Time's running out. I'm going to pull, if you haven't gotten in the game by now, and you're going to have to choose at some point, like, this is your choice. Boom. You're either with me or you're with the terrorists.
Yeah, I know, but it's
Don't you think there's a reason, Lawrence, why you're getting this word and you're getting this information and you're figuring some of these things out now, right now? Yeah. All your life you've had time to read the Bible. All your life you've had time to call for signs and wonders.
Well, you're using the creative side of your brain, and I'm just pure logic. Okay, so all these plans, all this stuff of fucking the Bible up. If it's Satan who's behind it, it's backfired because, up until recently, I was thinking all these so-called holy books that have got various similarities. I thought that they were all, they weren't holy books, that they were made by the fucking Romans to divide and rule the population. But this one change to these Bibles tells me that the Bible is real. So they've got me. I've gone over to finding God and Jesus purely from logic, not from any kind of
exactly. There's a way to get to everybody. Don't you see that now?
Yeah.
Okay. Everybody has a trigger. Everybody has a pathway. Everybody has a door. And so the whole idea behind God trying to get to you. There's people walking around all over the place that have probably got signs flashing, the equivalent of signs flashing at them from all over the place. And they're like ignoring. That's not for me. That's not for me. That's not for me. Because their heart's closed.
Yeah.
Their whole system is it's like pop-ups. Click, shut, pop-ups are coming up all over the place. Add. Yeah. And it could easily be God or the angels or the Matrix, whatever, trying to get in.
I know, but it seems like all the things that we were told are impossible are sort of they're happening. I mean, that one I posted that one today, and that looked perfectly real to me. You could never get to the end of the rainbow where there's supposedly a pot of gold because I used to get on my bicycle and
try to chase the rainbow.
Chase the rainbow, but somebody's posted some footage from a car where you can see the rainbow.
They're at the foot of the rainbow.
Down to the ground, which has got to be a Mandela. It's got to be a change in the code. It's one of the signs, isn't it? So we are definitely in end times, and whatever. I don't know what time frame the end times are over, but they're certainly moving fast, and then it's certainly going to be in the next 2 or 3 generations. It's not going to be a long time. It could even be in the next 20 years because everything's happening so fast. My intelligence has gone up since I met you and started doing all this. I've done more thinking since I've known you than I've lived my entire life.
Well, me
My
too.
brain's churning over. It's just freaky, because I didn't think about particularly too much in the past, but
Let me
now it's like,
interject. Let me interject something here. Did you know that if it says in the Bible, men's hearts would fail them if at the end times there wasn't a quickening?
yeah, yeah. There is a quickening, yeah. We are in end times, and things things are moving up. Nothing surprises me, and all of these things that they keep bringing out that they've suddenly discovered that nobody's ever known about for years. I think all those have just been written into the code now, but made to look like they've been there for a long time. And he put a video out tonight, Star Gods, about the Matrix and the planting false memories in people's minds, and I'm pretty sure that that's what's happened with some people. Some people's minds are strong enough to know what they knew in the past, but some people, they just go along with it because I don't know, maybe they're weak in
Well, they're
some
not
way.
just going along with it. They're maybe their code is literally being overwritten. I mean,
Yeah,
it's being overwritten. What they knew before, what they thought before is gone because it's been overwritten. And,
yeah,
if you go in and you put in a link to a website and you change one digit or / or anything, it won't go there, right? 404 error.
yeah,
Um,
yeah,
so one little minute change in the code is changes everything. And um, when you start to realize that um, in the last since the inception, past the industrial age, when we got to the information age, which is equivalent to the computer age, okay, um, I believe that's when the quickening started, because when you start to think about the advancements in technology and their famous word they love to use, innovation. Okay. That's so innovative. Oh, look what our new innovation. And every bit of it leads to the submatrix becoming more powerful. The metadata collection, the tracking, the facial recognition software, the police being able to know where you are all the time. You're everywhere you are on your phone. Google's tracking you and so on. And yet everybody's just on their phone. They're just all in deeper and deeper and deeper. And at some point, it's all written. The beast system, mark of the beast, uh, you will have to get a mark on your hand or your forehead, and the number of the beast is 666. Whatever, if that has not been misinterpreted, but let's just go with that for now. Um, we already have the mark of the beast if we have credit cards with chips in them, and if we have phones attached to our hip all the time. And most of the people that are in the matrix just don't even pay any attention to the web coming around them and tightening. So, but those who see it, yeah. Oh, here comes 5G. Got to be afraid of that, because 5G is going to have mind control in with it. Oh, you conspiracy tinfoil hatters. What are you worried about? Yeah, well, you know what? You said that when I talked about HARP. You said that when I talked about GMOs. You said that when I talked about vaccines. Now what's all over the place? Vaccines, why are you eating gluten-free? Why are you worried about organic? It's true. GMIs are for shit. And the next thing they're going to do is they're going to take over the marijuana industry, and they're going to GMO the crap out of that. And, on and on and on. And in the meantime, people are just going, yeah, but look at this fancy new phone and all the stuff it does. And, my computer's got 400 big gigabytes per second, whatever. Okay. And that's the quickening of the submatrix, in my opinion. Okay. Otherwise, I mean, people are working themselves to death. And when they're not working, what are they doing? They're vegging the crap out of their life. They're just in front of the TV. I'm as guilty as the next person. I come home so exhausted from my work. I mean, I do hard work. My body hurts. All I can do is just sit down and watch some episode on Netflix of something and go finish it tomorrow. And so I'm just like all the other people, but at least I'm aware that this is not what life was supposed to be about.
Yeah, I know. Well, I'm sort of brave. I spend far too much time sat in front of screens, but I am learning to play the guitar very slowly, and go out.
How's that coming along, Lawrence?
Well,
why don't you jack into the matrix like they do, and it's all of a sudden you just unhook and go, I can play guitar like Jose Feliciano.
You've got to sell your soul for that one, but yeah, no, I'm learning to play Hotel California at the moment. I know there's just, I mean, all the bands are satanic anyway, so if you love God and Jesus, you shouldn't listen to any music, any popular music. But they've got all the best songs and all the best instrumentals because Satan's fucking told them how to do it.
Of course. They've sold out.
So
you know what?
No,
wait a minute, Lawrence. I got to tell you something. Being a Christian is not unfun. Okay, you don't get to not have fun anymore. You still get to have fun, right? It's up here and in here, and understanding, morals and ethics and stuff like that. Listening to some music because you enjoy music is not sinful. Okay, and you're covered. Okay, you have an insurance policy, and so look at it this way. When you get corruption in your computer, what do? You get out some program like Malwarebytes or CCleaner or, one of those, and you run it. Just like right now, I keep having this pop up. It's about blocking websites, and the only thing I have on is this Hangout, right? So why it's doing that, I have no idea. But anyway, there's always a program to clean up the malware. Malware is equivalent to sin in my, the explanation. Okay. And so, you know better than to go out and murder someone. You know better than to go and steal something. You know all those things. It's already written in your code. It's written in all of our code. As a matter of fact, I think there are some people, psychopaths, that are missing that code. They're missing that very important message. There's the pop-up or something in the way. And you really can't fix those people because they're actually infected. They're missing something. Something's bad. And so I do feel sorry for those people who can't get out of their own way because of bad code. But the whole idea here, though, is with simulation and singularity and AI and the future, is there's going to be people who will be so easily convinced that there's movies all over the place about it. Let us download your latest, brain scan or whatever, and your memories and the whatever. And then, at some point we'll be able to clone people, and we'll load you up in a clone and you'll live forever. You'll be immortal.
Yeah.
That sounds really inviting to people who are going to be stuck here on Earth only for a while.
I know. And I've started, well, I'm not reading it. I've got it, like you sent me a link, so I'm playing the Bible as I go along, but there's stuff, and the stuff in it that's been altered. So, you've even got something that says in the Bible, I don't remember the exact words, but it says money is the answer to everything. You know,
Well, I
that's
asked,
in the Bible.
listen,
Get on, come on, come on.
I've asked Jimmy about some of these that you sent me. The about the dung and the piss, eating the dung and drinking. That's been in the Bible for a long time. Long time. That's not a new change.
But that's not very eloquent, is it?
Well, it's not, but nobody said it was a book of eloquence. There's all kinds of sin going on in the Bible. It's the point of the stories. It's the
Yeah, but
point of the message. The
you
Old
know, but
Testament is pre-Jesus. This is a book that explains the corruption of earth and God's creation over time, and then enter Jesus into the play. And
well,
he's the hero. And that's another one of those mythological stories, like in Zeitgeist, oh, there's this guy and this guy and this guy, all meet the same criteria that Jesus does. But when you go through and you verify that bullshit, you find that no, so-and-so died and he never came back. So he's out. Okay. And then, you can go through them one at a time. And why do you think they pay so much attention to the lineage in the Bible? To make sure that you understand there's only one guy with the prophecy that could manage the lineage. Okay. It's all for the purpose of showing the history, showing the degradation of mankind. And then from here forward, here's how and why the rules changed. Sin's been wiped out. You just have this one simple path, this one program, one thing, Jesus. And if you go with that, then all the rest of this doesn't matter. You're only here for a short time and you're here to learn. And once you learn that, you just gotta keep on kind of just going through the motions, because it's all different then. The whole picture becomes much more clear.
Yeah, I know. Laurie, you said earlier about Jonah and the whale. The whale is now the fish, and you said
Right.
Jesus
The
was
big fish.
walking on water. He doesn't walk on water anymore. He
What?
walks on the sea. He walks on the sea in the Bible now. Jesus walks on the sea, and some translations say the lake, but none of them say walking on water. So anybody.
Well,
everybody's
I
heard
mean,
Jesus.
that's kind of like, that's not really a big deal. I don't have a problem with
Says sea in
description.
here. Says I know it's the same. It's the same thing. Another form of water. What's the point of changing things like that? I just don't get it.
He wasn't the only one that walked on water, too, by the way. Did you read the more?
No. But
there was one of the disciples who was like freaked out. What are you doing?
Yeah.
And Jesus told him you can do it too. And it was all about faith, showing him that if you have faith, you can do the supernatural too.
Well, this magician in Britain, he walked on water. He walked on the Thames. And it looked real.
I mean, so you have to ask, okay?
Yeah.
Did he do that? Of course, now here's another little tricky part that you got to jump in there, okay? Satan's minions, demons, the fallen angels, blah, blah, Satan is the prince of the air. He can walk on water. He can manipulate the matrix. He can do supernatural things, just like his minions can. So if you saw a guy walking on the water, you could say, is he A, being assisted by God and Jesus through faith and prayer? Or is he being assisted by Satan and his demons? There's people who believe that all these magic tricks, like people levitating and all of that, is that they've summoned demons before, because God doesn't play magic games. He doesn't do that. Doesn't need to. So, that's where discernment comes in. What am I seeing here? What do I believe? And many people say, if you're confused or you don't know, pray about it and you will get the answer. It's like going on
Yeah.
Google and saying,
Yeah.
what is the answer to blah, blah? And it will, you will get it on your heart, the answer. So, I mean, I'm not talking about religion. There's a big, huge chasm between what mankind created, the religions, and faith. Big chasm.
Yeah. I
People
mean,
practice religions. Uh, God never created a religion. Satan has. Satan's created some religions. I'm not going to
yeah.
name them, but um, the whole point of the matter is is it easier for you to understand and believe in the supernatural under this premise, under this kind of thinking? Because I know you're, Mr. Logic, and I am the opposite of you. I mean, I have my own logic, but there's a difference in how we're arriving at the same conclusion, which is what I find fascinating about you and I having been thrown together, connected, because that, I have no other alternative at this point after all these years than to think that that was manifest destiny. Do you?
Yeah.
I mean, we've never
Yeah.
met in real life. We don't,
Yeah.
there's tons of things we don't know about each other's life and history and background, uh, and never ask and probably never will. Doesn't matter. That's not what it's about. Never has been. Don't you find that curious? Most people by now would say, well, how many kids do you have? Did you ever have kids? What was your mother's name? Did you have a dad growing up? Where did you live when you were a kid? What school did you go to? How many grades did you finish? We've never asked either one of each other any of that.
Yeah. I know, but we seem to be tuning into
Well,
the
it's
same
just
information.
it's
The
some
information's out there.
yes,
We,
it's
we,
some
we
it's some synchronicity. And if we're
some,
crazy and we're wrong, we're crazy together, right? We're
yeah.
like the same crazy.
Yeah. I mean, it's really, we want to be, we're figuring out from our perspective anyway, how this earth actually works and why we're here. And it's, once you know, it gives you quite a lot of peace and
Well,
tranquility.
sure. Because you know
It,
what? Once you get to the point where you really have this grasp of it, whether it's the
yeah.
correct grasp or not, but when you have
Yeah.
this grasp of it,
Yeah.
it's like Neo at the end of the first movie where the agents are fighting him and shooting at him and everything, and he's just like in slow motion, or they're in slow motion. He's just like, no big deal, guys. I got this. And that's how I feel about the submatrix now. It doesn't have
Yeah.
any hold on me. I'm out of it. Okay. I'm like, Neo and Morpheus and in the crew in the ship or in Zion or whatever, outside of the matrix. And it's, I see the whole construct better now. And
Yeah.
if I'm wrong, and it's not that, I'm certainly not hurting anybody by having that understanding of it. Am I?
I know, and I used to, before I found the faith, as whatever you want to call it, I was aware of some divine force out there, and this is a good example because when I got into healing, I was helping quite a lot of people with various ailments, some of them very serious, but I was this guy from Australia had come over with his wife, and he contacted me, and he said he's come over to the UK for alternative treatment, and he booked himself into a hotel in the Midlands in the UK, and would I help? Um, and this woman, she'd only been given 2 weeks to live, and he said, "Will you help?" So I went anyway, and did my best. But when the body is totally riddled with cancer, I mean, this woman loved me. I was, doing my best for her. I had her sat in bed, because she didn't get out of bed much, watching all the favourite comedy on TV, and she was there laughing. And so the last few weeks of her life, she only lived for 2 weeks.
She was happy.
But the problem was, I mean, we were trying all these alternative remedies, because it's that either that or do nothing. And of course, she died while she was in the hotel. And when the paramedics came, when the husband called them, they started reporting that there was things like ozone machines in the room, and some of the stuff that he'd bought for cancer. And he got arrested. The guy got arrested, and the police tracked me down, and they took me in, and I was in a video interview. 5 hours I was there, and I was telling them all about alternative medicine and what. I mean, anyway, this Australian guy was a multimillionaire. They sent him to prison for assisted suicide. He was in there for about 6 months. He never went to trial. But and so I asked the big out there, why did you send this poor sick woman who's only got 2 weeks to live, and there was no chance I could save her? And the answer that came back to me was, whatever you see in your life in future in terms of healing, that's as bad as it's going to get. And that was the moral of that escapade. And it was, because she was so ill. But for the last few weeks of her life, she was, albeit very sick, she was happy.
Well, and you know what? There's quality. This is one of those stories about quality versus quantity. And that is really sad that the guy, that the ignorance of the institutions, agencies, bureaucracy, blah, blah, is so stupid that they wouldn't know the difference between somebody trying to save somebody's life and extend their life and somebody assisting suicide. I mean, that just shows you the brainwashing that they're under and the programming that they're under. And, I think at the end of the day, once people can kind of wrap their mind around, you are a spirit, you're in a meat suit body here in this realm for however long you're supposed to be here. There's people who get killed early. There's people who live to 116. There's people who, have horrific, miserable lives. And there's people who sail through like Teflon, water off a duck's back. None of that is any of your business. It's got nothing to do with you and your purpose for being here and your lesson in being here. And I have to say that a lot of the matrix, bureaucracy, and hold over people is, almost all of it is just based in their own fear of being a dissident, their own fear of pushing back against it, of getting arrested or getting, jailed or having their kids taken away. They've set it up to where, we're all in a little prison, and you can't turn sideways without getting caught in the net, whether it's family and children's services or the court through a divorce or a speeding ticket, or, it's just a mere fishing without a license. It's just so convoluted at this point that the best you can do is just try to keep your head ducked under as much as possible and try to stay out of the game as much as possible. And most people are not doing that. They're connected with that phone in their face or their computer online. you know, the more stuff they buy, the more tracking, the more all of that. They're just doing the opposite of what they ought to be doing, and consuming. And you know what? I'll give you another food for thought here before we get off. Blessing your food, praying over your food. You know what that's about?
What is it? What is it?
That's about purifying it before it goes into your body. I mean, think about it. All the stuff that's in food, people think they're buying organic food. Plane flew over with chemtrails, or glyphosate blew over from the farm next door, or there's no perfect, clean anything anymore. Even if you grew it yourself, it's somehow going to be tainted by this decrepit earth. And so, go ahead.
Yeah, Laurie, can I just change subject for a moment
Sure.
now, because I don't know whether we've talked about this, but have you looked into the works of Victor Schauenberger?
No.
This is the guy. You
I don't
haven't?
think so.
Okay. All right. Well, if you were in the shower and the water was running down the curtain or the wall, the water never travels in a straight line. Water's got intelligence.
Mhm.
Water is trying to reinvigorate itself by curving. That's why you could have a river. Rivers never go in a straight line, even if all the underlying rock stratas and the soil were identical. The river would still weave, and as it weaves and goes round, it creates all these vortices and what have you, and it brings life into the water. It swirls around all the particles on the bottom, and it's putting life into itself. So the best water you can drink is stuff that's coming out, that's passed through a river and down all these rocks and stuff. So the water that people are talking about, distilled water, reverse osmosis water, but the water and the water that comes out of your tap, obviously, but all these waters are dead. Right now, I don't know how I got into this, but you can actually put life back into water. I'm going to show you in a minute. You can put life back into water by simulating what the river does. So if you just bear with me a second, I'll do a little demo, and also magnetize the water. So I've built my own little device that puts the life that a river would put back into a water and magnetizes it. And I'll tell you, this water, it tastes a whole lot different, and it's like drinking something completely different to what you normally drink. I'm just you talk to the audience, and I'm going to get my little gizmo out and show it.
What? Unplug your headphones for a second, so you'll hear me coming out of your computer while you're going to do that. And I will tell you, when I was a kid, there was an underground spring that the Indians had carved out of the edge of a stream bank, and the water, it was like a perfectly round hollow down into the sheer rock that was about maybe 10 inches across and maybe foot and a half deep, something like that. And in the summertime, we always went down there, and we had a little there was a bent tree next to this little bubbling underground spring. We kept a cup hanging on a little branch there, and obviously leaves and debris would get in it, if you hadn't been there for a while. And so we would clean it out. And it was lined with moss around the outside, this beautiful green moss. And we would clean it out and would fill itself back up in maybe, I don't know, 6-8 minutes. It bubbled out of there pretty good. And oh my God, this water was so cold and so tasty. And I mean, it's like it didn't have flavor, but it did. It didn't taste like anything, but it tastes like water is supposed to taste. And to think of all the convolutions that this water had to go through to get there, I I totally understand what your premise is here. So go ahead. Let's see this experiment.
Okay, well, so I've just put regular tap water in just to do the demo. I've got a reverse osmosis filter which takes most of the crap out of the water. But I just want to show you how you can build one of these things. You can use glass bottles or plastic. Now, sometimes the glass might break and you might need to get a new one, but you know, these are just soda bottles, not shitty soda, botanically brewed. And all you need to make that, so you need 2 bottles, yeah. So I'll take this off. There we go. You need 2 bottles. These cost about $1. It's a vortex thing for water. Don't you can see that? Yeah.
Hold it still. Stop
and
moving it around. Hold it still. Okay.
And he joins the 2 bottles. So all I've done here, I've got 2 neodymium magnets, which are put over the edge of one of the bottles, and then I screw that on. Okay.
Uh-huh.
Okay. And then I screw that onto the other bottle. And you get the vortex. You're supposed to do this like 3 or 4 times. So you've got the 2, you've got the 2 bottles there. Okay, so you turn that one there, and to get the vortex, you just give it a little twirl, and you'll I don't know, it might need coloured water to do it, but you'll see in a minute what the vortex looks like, and it forms like a DNA spiral. Go on, there we go. Can you see that now?
Yeah, I can. That's cool.
Yeah,
it's like a tornado.
And that's put in the these are called tornado joiners or whatever, and you do that, you know, 3 or 4 times, and the water is at its most dynamic when it's at about 3 degrees. So all you got to do is pop it in the fridge, you know. So you basically do that, and you get enough for the day, and you put it in a big container, and you drink this water. And apparently it's got remarkable healing properties. So magnetized water is used in Australia, and the fruit farmers, the ones who grow strawberries, the pipe water, and it's probably just city water, but it goes through this magnetic system in the pipes, and since they've started feeding the strawberries on it, they're getting 30 to 40% yield on the fruits. They're getting more fruits and bigger fruits and lots of other crops there just by simply magnetizing the water. So if that does that to food, what does it do to the human body? You know, so if you've got pure water, real proper pure water, and you magnetize it and you put the life back into it, it could have, I'm convinced it's got some, you know, marvelous health benefits. So if you drink it over a period of time and cook with it, you know, because it's putting the life back into water. I mean, apparently 99, whether molecules are true or not, I don't know, but apparently they say the body's whatever 70 or 80% water, but in terms of the number of molecules, the body is 99% water. In terms of, if you count the number of molecules, you know, of all the different so-called total molecules in the body, water is 99% of all of them. So we are basically water. Water's got intelligence.
I know it does.
You know.
Okay, so you're starting your process out with reverse osmosis water, but you could do the same thing with distilled or any filtered water.
Yeah,
spring water tastes horrible to me. I can't stand bottled water.
Yeah, well, this water tastes
plastic
really
bottled
soft.
Anyway. Ugh.
Yeah, it does. Well, I could do the regular water. I've had people tasting it, and I'll get a glass of regular water out of the filter, and the one that's been magnetized and spiraled, and that one tastes completely different, but it's the same water. Well, it started off the same water.
I'll definitely have to try this. I'll try to find one of your contraptions that you put the bottles together with. Where did you get that? At a health food store?
No, they're on eBay. You can get 5 for $5.
Well, send me a link. Yeah.
And
I'd like to know what that is.
I'll tell you where to get the magnets. You can, you know, you have to be careful. These magnets are very powerful, so you got to be careful with them. But it's amazing, you know, amazing that this. I mean, there's a guy in America who sells magnetic water. I think he's called Mad Mike or somebody. And,
Maybe. I
he
mean,
excuse it. You know,
if there's anybody
it's
who's figured out anything, how to do sell anything here, they're going to come up with a marketing strategy and a website and
oh,
the
it's
whole
no, he
nine
sells
yards. So I'm
he
sure
sells magnetic water.
I'm sure you can
Sending
buy
it
it,
out.
but it must be cheaper to do it yourself.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know
So,
it's
all right,
weird, but yeah,
Lawrence. Well, we tackled a lot of stuff, and we either made a couple people think about stuff, or we made a couple people unsub. I'm not really sure,
well,
but
we don't
um,
care.
this is more this is more for listening than it is for watching, and it's one of the reasons why we have well over 5 million listeners on iTunes and Hipcast and other podcast methods, because it's really about the conversation and not really about trying to teach anybody anything. But one of our number one things is to try to unteach people from things that we feel we've done an adequate amount of research about. And I've gotten to the point, I used to jump in on threads I mean, I have a lot of flat earth friends from the last several years. You know, you just get all these friends in common, and I accept most people, or followers. And I see these posts they make with all of this AE circle stuff, and oh, this is the perfect, model reenactment, and this fits perfectly with all the different anomalies with the sun. And I'm like, you're already started out on the wrong premise. How can it be the perfect anything? And I used to comment, and they would get mad and say, I thought you were a flat earther. Or the trolls would jump in on my side thinking I was one of them, because I'm, arguing with this person, and well, not arguing, just stating my case. And it got to the point where I'm like, you know what? You're going to believe whatever you're programmed to believe at this point. You haven't done any research. You're just using other people's stuff they're putting out there and ganging on, and that's it. And so if you really took the time to investigate what it is you're putting out there, the Eric Dubays of the world, and others, if you really ask the right any questions at all, instead of just mimicking what other people say, you wouldn't be pushing this stuff. So that's Flat Earth Conspiracy Revisited. It's not just a flat disc with a dome over the top with an ice wall around the outside. I'm sorry, that's not where we live. The next question people give you automatically when you declare something like that: well, what's your model? Well, what's your map? Well, let's see what you got. Where's your research? And you
Yeah,
know what? I'm not responsible to you or to anyone else to give you the answers. Every one of you individually, on your own, with your own free will, got to find all your answers. Okay. But to get stuck with bad answers to bad questions is also your own responsibility. Not my bubble, not my problem. So,
yeah.
any last words, Lawrence?
I was just going to ask you a question. I don't know why I wrote this
Okay.
down, but I was thinking who were the first, because I've been looking at the Bible, and I thought, yeah, that sounds familiar. A means to an end. And of course, in the Old Testament, there's all these stories about God asking people to sacrifice the firstborn sheep or cow or whatever. But in practice, they didn't. They paid a tax instead to the local priest or something. And I'm thinking, oh, that sounds familiar. They're just
Yeah,
bloody tax collectors, and it was a means to an end.
sure.
Before there was money, they were, they were collecting the tax for God, but spending the money themselves. What are they going
Well,
to do? Magic money up to
and think
heaven?
about this. until you know you can do something, you really can't know you can do it, right? I mean,
Yeah.
just like jumping out of an airplane if you have a fear of heights, or picking up a spider when you're scared to death of spiders. So the whole point of pressing someone to show their faith, uh, the idea is this earth and this worldly realm is finite. I'm going to end it someday. Which is more important? What's happening here and now with you, your family, your children, your wife, your lives, your livestock, or eternity, which is the whole idea behind meeting God and going to heaven, meeting Jesus, meeting God, meeting the Holy Spirit. Let me just say this. I've talked about the Trinity, okay? People read the first part of Genesis where God created the heaven and the earth and created man in our image, in their image. And they're like, see right there. Right there tells you there's more gods. That's not just one God. They wouldn't use they. They is the Trinity. But it's the same. It's like one entity with three personalities or three personas, but one doesn't exist without the other, right? So you've got
Yes.
God who created all this, but can't come in here and interface easily. Okay. Doesn't want to. And you've got the Holy Spirit, which is in and out of here all the time, working here all the time. That's the voice you hear, the Holy Spirit. And Jesus, God in the flesh. So that's, and Jesus lived before the earth was created. He was already there. So it's like, there's X amount literal, okay? And there's X amount parable and figurative. I mean, it's not just you sit down and read it like a storybook. You have to think. You have to discern what is this really? What is the point that's about trying to be made here, and what do I get out of it? And it's just that simple. People go to other people. They go to church. They go to Bible study. They go to they listen to YouTube videos. Having someone read you the Bible on a YouTube video is one thing. Okay, that's fine. That's just the same as reading it yourself. But to have somebody tell you what it says, but you didn't read it, that's a totally different thing. Because having someone else describe it, they could have gotten it wrong. It's up to you to not just be faith-based toward a human, right? So if you don't want to read it, that's anybody's choice. It's it's a lot to read. But here's what happens. If you hear enough of the stories, at some point you will get curious enough to just read it. And in my opinion, if you are only going to read half of it, just read the New Testament, because it answers all the questions in the Old Testament. They're all there.
Yeah. The Old Testament
and the end is there too. The Old Testament is so broken apart and disjointed and not explained as to what's the intention going on here, that loses a lot of people if they start at the very beginning. I was told when I first read the Bible to start in the New Testament.
It's like Lord of the Rings. I mean, I'm terrible going to the movies. Not that I go very often, but I usually fall asleep in things like Lord of the Rings. It just goes on and on and on and on and on and on, and
right.
And you're thinking, where's this going? I like.
But if you just sit down and read a book of it, one book.
Yeah.
Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Most people start there. They read those 4 Gospels. And
Yeah.
because that's where Jesus is talking. If you want to learn the whole idea, you could pretty good idea to listen to the guy who's like the main character.
Yeah.
So, but with regards to the singularity, the matrix, artificial intelligence and how that's all going to work, that is where, that is where you're really going to have to make some decisions, and the rubber's going to have to meet the road there, because those who know the word and know the admonitions and the end story, the end times revelation, uh, they won't have a hard time discerning what not to partake in. It'll be pretty easy, but it's going to be pretty hard, because it literally says that at some point you won't be able to buy anything unless you take the mark of the beast. Well, I don't know about
Yeah.
you,
That's
but
what.
most people go to the market 3 or 4 times a week and pick up a few things here and a few things there, what they feel like eating. Yeah, whether or not they grow their own vegetables, 90% of the people, 95% of the people out there, they're not raising their own cow or their own pig, or and slaughtering animals and chickens, and they may have a few chickens for eggs and growing some lettuce and a few vegetables in the backyard, but for the most part, most people cannot feed themselves in
Yeah.
the modern world. So you're at the mercy of the beast system to feed yourself. And that's going to have to be a choice. If
It's
it comes to that, that's a whole nother issue. People will know when it's end times, when
well.
we're in the book of
That's
Revelation.
yeah. Yeah. Just a quick point, Laurie. I mean, I'm seeing how this is going at in the supermarkets now. 80% thereabouts of people are serving themselves at these self-serve checkouts. I don't know what it's like in the States, but that's in all the supermarkets apart from the small ones. And most of the checkout positions, self-serve, you can't use cash. You've got to have a plastic card to use it. So they are going to phase out cash altogether. That's the plan. Probably in the next 10, 15 years. I mean, if you want to fill up your car with gas at night at a gas station, it's self-serve, and it's a plastic card only. You can't pay with cash, and it's going to be all digital currency before long, and that's
Well,
probably going to be the start
just
of
just know,
you know
Lawrence, there will always be sort of an under the Thunderdome uh, dissident
barter.
crowd out there
Yeah,
that
yeah,
will have their own black market, and they'll figure it out, because there's always going
yeah.
to be the renegades of the world who will not
Oh yeah,
participate in the game. So,
yeah. Even we should all do it in a small way, and
well, I mean, um, sh- sharing is caring, and that's where it's going to have to come down to. I mean, I grew up going to my grandparents' farm every summer, all
yeah,
summer long, every summer, and the lady down the road grew massive amounts of tomatoes and green peppers. And my grandmother, had a huge garden, and we each got a little piglet or calf or lamb to raise each summer. And, we knew the hard truth that come fall, it was going to go to the slaughter, and
yeah,
that was going to go in the freezer, and that was going to be food for the winter. So
yeah.
I'm
And
well
I
aware
know,
of community. They shared, the farmers would get together in the neighborhood area and have like a farmer's market, and they'd sell their extra produce and buy extra produce from other people that they didn't raise.
yeah, I know, and the benefit of doing that is that you're cutting out the tax man, because, like, say for example, I go for a guitar lesson, and it would, in your money, it would probably cost $30 for an hour,
Mm-hmm.
but I get my guitar lessons free because I talk to him about alternative health and what he can do to improve his own health. So I go for my lesson. We have a chat in his kitchen and have a few drinks first, and then we go and have a lesson. So, you know, he hasn't got to pay tax on, you know, if I paid him the money, he'd have to pay a third
Right.
of his
Do you
money
call
in
that
tax.
do you call
And if
that
I charge,
bartering there?
well, it is sort of a barter, yeah, but
Yeah.
because no money changes hands,
Right.
so the taxman can't tax him, and they can't tax me
Right.
because
But
no
they
money changed
believe me,
hands.
they want to. They know they're, do
Yeah,
you know what the trillions of dollars of black market is already going on in the world? I
yeah,
mean, trillions and trillions of dollars of people
yeah,
buying and selling without paying taxes. And
yeah,
they're, you know, they know it happens and they
yeah.
try to keep it to a minimum. But at the same time, there's no way you could control. I mean, let's face it. Do you have like yard sales or garage sale? What do you call them? Garage sales,
Car boot sales, yeah.
rummage sales.
Car boots. People park in a field and open the boot of their car, and they sell goods from that. And they put a little table
Okay.
out.
Do you have them at your house where you know, put stuff out in the lawn and people come to your house, you advertise or put a sign out and they come and buy stuff from you, you know, your used stuff, stuff you're trying to get rid of. So they
Well,
do
I
that
know they
here.
do
It's
it where you
supposed
are.
you're supposed to only get one of those a year.
Yeah, yeah,
And you know, it's used stuff, but it still has value.
yeah,
And you know, I'm surprised that they haven't rigged it up yet to where if you advertise in the newspaper or whatever that you're having a yard sale or garage sale, whatever you want to call it, that they don't send somebody by to give you a
yeah,
form to say how much did you
yeah,
make out of this, you know, because some
yeah,
people make hundreds
yeah,
of dollars and some people have these sales. They go out and buy crap from other people sales
yeah,
and then bring it home
yeah,
and clean it up or mark it up or whatever and sell it again and make a few more bucks.
yeah,
But,
yeah.
you
It'll,
know, um, I tell people all the time, you know, the system is only as big as you allow it to get. And the only way that you could ever bring it back, you know, rein it back is if everybody collectively agreed. You know, I've said this many times. Can you imagine what it would be like? Well, do you have a national income tax day or do you pay every month income tax or how do you do that? Like ours is
the,
tax day is on April 15th.
if you work for a company or a corporation or a business, you pay tax as you go along. So every paycheck they take the tax and the insurance out. If you work for yourself, you submit an annual return, and then they invoice you for the
Okay.
amount of
So
tax
on
you got to
that
pay.
tax day, imagine if everybody just didn't file one of those papers and
Yeah,
didn't pay.
yeah,
I mean, the government would come to a screeching halt
yeah,
because we already know that all the money that is out there being used is all paper money, monopoly money. It's all, you know, talk about the matrix, talk about virtual reality. Our entire monetary system, debt-based monetary system, is the submatrix. I mean,
yeah,
you know, anybody who has a central banking system, state run, whether it's a country or a state run banking system, it's all debt. It's all paper money. It's fiat currency. It's not backed by anything. And, you know, if you want to spend more money, government, then just print some more. And you know, why are you taking our tax money? And the answer is, well, if we didn't take your tax money and we printed more, then your money wouldn't, inflation would happen and your money would be worth anything. And you'd have to take a wheelbarrow to buy a loaf full of money to buy a loaf of bread, like in Venezuela or wherever. And so, but the point is that it's all illusion anyway. Rich people are illusion rich people, even though the money they have is real. In a sense, it's not. Ask them how much cash they have. Most of them are all rich on paper. A piece of real estate worth X amount of money, a piece of, a car worth X amount of money, a business worth X. That's all on paper. And the more digital it becomes, the more plastic it becomes, the more virtual reality it is, right? I mean, we're almost just so there that at some point, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if they didn't just come out with it and say, so y'all know, you've been living in the matrix your entire life. And, you don't live in a pod with jacked into, a mind control matrix thing, but it's as close to the same thing as that movie. When they said load the program, were you looking at the woman in the red dress, all those different scenes? The whole point of the matter is that people see what they want to see, people believe what they want to believe, or how they're programmed. Is there any difference?
Yeah, but they're not going to tell us, Laurie,
Would
are
they
they?
know? Would they know any difference?
They're not going to announce that we're in a matrix because
Well, they didn't in the movie either, did they?
Yeah,
The only time that they ever talked about the Matrix was when, somebody like Morpheus or Neo questioned, got in there and started mucking around and trying to change things, trying to expose things.
They're putting a lot of programs out about them as being in a matrix, so maybe they are, but they're already in this false matrix anyway, aren't they?
Well, isn't that part of the universal law of free will? Is that they have, you can't just break the law, whether you're Satan or not. You got you got to play by the rules, or it's game over. And as long as you stay within the rules, and the point is that based on the universal law of free will, you have to at least give the poor little goofs hints out there. And if they care enough and they're smart enough and try enough, there's enough hints flying around to you can figure it out. Okay. And, like in the movie, I can't think of the guy's name at the moment, that decided to go back into the matrix. And he wanted to be rich and he wanted to be, famous, like a movie star or something. And he had all these requests for his new program in the Matrix, to turn on his buddies. So, how do we know that isn't why some people have it all? Like some of the huge sports stars or music industry or actors, maybe there is a deal. They talk about a deal with the devil. I remember Bob Dylan talking about it. I mean, he's an internationally known name practically his whole life. Maybe that's part of the game, part of the virtual reality of the submatrix. You can't make deals with God.
Yeah, they're all in it. They're all in it together. That's why, but if they're going to, the people who accept that it is a matrix, I mean, I can just do it from pure logic. Well, you probably do too, because it's the only thing that makes any sense now since you kicked off on. When we talked about it a couple of years ago, and then you just suddenly latched onto it about 6 weeks ago.
When we talked about it a couple of years ago, we basically were just talking about the sky being simulated, all of the activities that are going up above our heads, and how that made that work. We weren't really talking about life, the universe, and everything is a computer program or a computer simulation. is God a computer? Did God use a computer to do it? No, I actually think God's probably a little bit, in the modern vernacular, tech savvy than that. I think it's a bigger program than just some, virtual reality. But that's the closest thing that we have been exposed to at this point to be able to use to explain it. Okay. So I haven't stopped thinking about it. And I've been asking people, once they read the blog, I asked them to look at their world from that perspective for a while and see if they can catch anything. Not necessarily a glitch in the matrix, because I don't think that's exactly how to describe it, but just notice the workings of things. And we've talked about ghosts, we talked about all kinds of things about manifestations and so on. It's just to look at the world from that perspective and see if you find a fault with that theory. And a lot of people don't want that to be the truth. They people from Big Bang Theory and stuff like that, they think they already got it all figured out. Nothing came together with nothing, created everything. I mean, that's about the most. That's about the most like. And you think God creating the earth is bizarre compared to that? Really? I mean, okay.
Here's a closing bizarre one, Laurie. I mean, the Matrix is this construct that we're in, but in the Bible, the Matrix is in the Bible now, but what it's used in place of is the womb, and the womb is the home for the embryo, isn't it? It's the embryo's matrix, isn't it? For 9 months till it's born. So it is a matrix there as well.
Well, I mean, the word matrix, is multifaceted. That's probably one of the reasons why they used it for the movie. And when you think about, if you know stuff and it's against the rules to keep it from people, to use that knowledge against people, then isn't that part of what predictive programming is all about? Put it out there, couch it as fiction, science fiction, even better, and people will be entertained and not have the first freaking clue that you just told them reality. If you just tweak it a little bit, you give them 90%, 80%, and you tweak the rest of it, and they wouldn't, it would make them scratch their head a little bit. Well, that could be because a lot of people were huge Matrix fans right after that movie came out.
What you're really saying there is that they'll tell you the truth in sort of a way that it is the truth, but they'll tell you in such a way that you won't believe it.
Right.
But it's still the truth. That's probably what they do, isn't it? Yeah.
Sure.
Why not? They don't want you to believe it, but they're obliged to tell you. So when they do,
well, and of course you have to have a whole bunch of people already pre-programmed to go, oh, that's crazy, that's stupid, you don't know what you're talking about, you tinfoil hatter. Okay. And so as long as you've got them, which is 90% of the news program readers, there are very few journalists anymore, actual journalists. They're all just reading off the program today in the news. And they all, you've seen enough of those repeated video montages where every little news station across America, their news readers of the evening repeat the exact same thing word for word. I think, they did an outside, thinking outside the envelope or something about outside the envelope. And every news station in America read the same freaking line at the beginning of their news. And it's like, really? That's not coordinated at all. And
Yeah.
so, but as long as you have that propaganda behind the scenes propping up the the story or the lie, whichever the case may be, just like when flat earth came out, you had your whole host of mainstream propagandists, gatekeepers, whatever, this side telling this truth and this side telling this truth, and then the newsy people all going, hoo-hoo, flat earthers are cuckoo, bunch of cult members. And that's all it took. And most people aren't willing to do the work, put out the effort to investigate anything you say if it's outside the mainstream. So they know that too, because that's all part of the matrix programming. And before you know it, you've got frustrated people trying to teach somebody something, and even it is wrong. Okay. I mean, it's a mess. It's a real mess. But I don't care what anybody else thinks, and never have. Not my whole life. Not my parents, not my family, not my school teachers. Nobody. Never cared what they thought. Maybe one person, my grandmother, I kind of gave a crap what she thought. But for the most part, I've always just thought and believed and thought what I wanted to. Even in school, I would under my breath, that's a load of crap. And, kids would, their eyes would get all big and they'd go, oh my God, you're going to get in trouble. And who cares? I don't care. It can't eat you. Cannibalism is against the law. So other than that, what are they going to do? Punish me? I'll get over it.
So you're the real reluctant rebel, maybe, or the what's your birth sign? You're Taurus.
I'm a Taurus.
You're the Taurus reluctant rebel. Then I'm the Aquarius.
Well, there's another one. See, Lawrence, if whatever you're born, people say that's how you're going to act. Like, no. You're gonna be born at the time that you're supposed to be born at, because that's how you're going to act. Yeah. Do you get me? It's backwards. People think, oh, well, you just read your horoscope and you're a Taurus, and so you get bullheaded on purpose. No, I came out of the box bullheaded. I didn't know I was a Taurus. Okay.
Yeah.
So in other words, which came first, the chicken or the egg? You're born to the sign that you're going to be like, not the other way around. So that's why it's so often true.
They came together. That's the latest.
I mean, you got to spread people out over the year. You can't have everybody be born in the same month, right?
Yeah. So
all right, I gotta go. Is it? Has Finn been outside all this time?
He's gone on. He's lying on the sofa.
Oh, what a spoiled puppy. Okay, so we'll get together again sooner. I've been working myself to death lately, and I've tried to have a lot of time to think before I kind of came in this direction. I didn't want to just do it without kind of being pretty prepared with my thinking. So I see you're coming along the same path that I am, only from a different direction. So I think this will be an interesting progression to Flat Earth Conspiracy. Is the next evolution here of our thinking. Because if you're not right, then you're wrong. So you have to keep working at it, right?
We'll get there in the end, Laurie. There we go. Where's the vortex? It's coming.
That's cool. Oop.
Yeah, it's like a
well, it's a whirlpool. It's like a sink drain. Hey, as a matter of fact, you're making a Coriolis effect.
Yeah.
Whichever way you spin the bottle is the way it's. Maybe you should try
Yeah.
that one out. Whichever way you spin the bottle, is that the way the vortex ends up going
Yeah.
versus
Yeah.
northern
Probably,
hemisphere,
yeah.
southern hemisphere, that crap about the Coriolis
Yeah.
water spins what is it? Clockwise in the south and counterclockwise in the north?
Well, it depends whether you're left-handed or right-handed. If you're right-handed, you're going to spin it in the opposite direction. So you're going to have to sort of go the reverse of what you'd normally do if you want to,
Right.
revitalize the water bottle. But yeah, I'll send you the links for those so you can buy.
And I'll put that in the description in the video when we're doing this pre-recorded, so it will go up either later tonight or tomorrow. So once again, everyone who made it this far, thanks so much for listening. We hope we gave you something thought-provoking to consider. And for those of you listening on the podcast, there will definitely be more of this to come. If you'd like to read the blog articles, part 1 and 2, it's on flatearthconspiracy.com website, and you'll just scroll down to the blogs and it's be the first 2 on there. So good to see you again, Lawrence, and we'll get together again soon. All right.
Yeah.
Good evening.
Our next meeting. Yes.
Yeah.